Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crucial Conversations podcast. My goal on this platform is to empower others towards self fulfillment. These are the conversations that you need to have to unlock your maximum potential. Whether you are feeling confused about your path in life, falling in love, starting a business, healing your inner child, moving to a foreign country, embarking on your spiritual journey, or building generational wealth, let's talk. The range of emotions and experiences that allow us to fully live our lives on Earth are beautiful and yet can be difficult to navigate. My goal is to create a safe space to talk about life, the good and the bad, in an effort to share wisdom, advice, and insight. I want to connect with you. I want to encourage you and empower you to live the life of your dreams, while reminding you that that does not always mean that you need to change your circumstances. Together, we will help each other level up and have the crucial conversations necessary to do so. Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of the Crucial Conversations podcast. Today, I am super excited to welcome an old friend, Kate, to the show. Kate has genuinely impressed me so much with her existence, and I'm very excited for today's episode. She's got a lot of really cool information and wisdom to share. She's about to embark on a very cool journey that we're going to talk about today, and we are going to discuss her mission as a human being and how her past experiences and her journey has led her to where she is today. So personally, my background with Kate, I met her for the first time on a sailing trip. We sailed together for my first time ever on a sailboat for over 200 nautical miles, and we got to know each other really well, really quick. And it was a really life-changing experience, and I was really glad that she was able to accompany me on that sail. From the moment I met her, she was a true light, and I knew it from the second that she introduced herself. She was a kind of person that you genuinely feel safe and welcomed in her presence. And I feel like you probably radiate that energy to just about everybody you meet. So I know you are killing it in all the things that you're doing, but I love the heart that you bring everywhere that you go. And a little bit of information that Kate shared with me prior to this episode, I'm going to read her bio. So Kate is a creative spirit, and she has a knack for storytelling, conservation, mindfulness, and art. She has worked in conservation and ecological restoration for the past few years, utilizing GIS and other mapping technologies to help safeguard biodiversity and enhance data accessibility. Her creative work, which I will be adding all of her links in the episode description so you guys can check it out, but her creative work fulfills her mission to spark joy, encourage deep thinking, and offer radical ways to, as she states, see and unsee the space around and within us, which I think is very beautiful. She is currently gearing up to head a Buddhist monastery of the Plum Village tradition in southern France for a year. Here, she will enter a 3-month deep retreat, followed by time spent helping run the organic farm and assist with other retreats. So, Kate, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you so much to have me. It's really such a gift and really exciting because I think all the conversations you've been having are just phenomenal. And so it's great to be here.
Thank you. Super excited. So today, I know that we were originally planning on talking a little bit about the idea of non-attachment and impermanence. And as I was speaking with Kate before the episode, she was kind of like, hey, this might be a better topic for me to discuss after I embark on this amazing journey to head this monastery. And maybe we can revisit the topic. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know you were about to do that. And so today we kind of pivoted, and I really want this episode to just be talking about your journey, Kate, the relationships in your life that brought you to where you are now, the profound impact that your granddad Ray had on you and your soul, and just your understanding of your true nature and your true purpose, and what awakening really means to you. Because I know that when I had asked you to fill out that questionnaire, you had said that your overall, kind of mission statement was to assist in the collective awakening. So I want to begin there, and I just want to ask you what that means to you.
That is just a great way to start. Just going all in. I love it. Yeah, so I think for me, waking up is in terms of consciousness and how much are we aware of what we're doing here on this planet, and like how much are we mindful kind of quite the existence in itself. Uh, and to kind of wake up to beauty and the miracle of life and really kind of what that means. And then also waking up within ourselves and kind of what we can get in deeper right now about of just really understanding this self and this uniqueness that you're born into and kind of what purpose can come from that and how you can kind of really lead a life of significance. So yeah, that's kind of my thing is like kind of just becoming aware of all of this. And when I say this, it's life itself. Mhm.
Absolutely. I think that, I totally resonate with your mission and the overall idea of this collective awakening, because I do think as a human race we are undergoing this massive shift in consciousness. And I know that I started getting into it about 2-ish years ago or so. So I mean, it's still relatively fresh, it's still relatively new, but I think a lot more of my peers are kind of hopping on this train of what is self-awareness, what is mindfulness, why are we here, what is this interconnectedness that is talked about, whether it's out in the open or kind of in symbols and things that are maybe a little bit more hidden and not as apparent or literal. So I really resonate with that. And I have to ask, how did you kind of enter this space, and what was the match that started the fire for you and kind of shifted you out of this living out your life into a space of being more mindful of what this life is and how you're living it?
That's a great question. And I suppose like there there isn't like one time I drank the Kool-Aid and was like, whoa, mind blown. It was kind of a continuation, which I think it's just like in the morning. Like when I wake up, it's a slow process where like first I kind of grumble and then like one eyeball opens. And that's kind of what my conscious wake up has been like. Um, I will say I've always been a deep thinker, like even as a kid. I would kind of see things. I'm like, like can you explain that to me? Um, but really, my interest, I think, in meditation and mindfulness kind of came in college because growing up, I was always a very anxious child. So I experienced a lot of like mental anguish. It's kind of always like, do other people experience this? Like, is this the way that I have to like live life? Um, and I really tended to have an interest in things that were very grounding, farming, spending time outdoors, um, things that do kind of tend to nature, but never really thought about it in a mindful manner until I was in college and took a Buddhism course. And that really started to spark this interest in mine. And I decided after I was going to graduate, and I'm sure a lot of young individuals might feel this way. When you're about to graduate, you have this gift of a question that can kind of be overwhelming, but it's like, okay, what do I do with my life now? And there's a lot of privilege in the opportunity to ask that question, which I really appreciate. But it kind of made me stop and be like, whoa, you can go in so many directions. Like, how do I know what's right for me? How do I know that this is the path? And I kind of realized that was the minute that I wanted to start to really tend to mindfulness, to kind of answer some of these bigger questions. And so I randomly found um, this retreat that was happening at this monastery in France by Thich Nhat Hanh, who, if you have not been introduced to yet, he's a Zen master who was heavily involved with a lot of the peace making in the Vietnam War and was very good friends with Martin Luther King Jr. and really great, phenomenal individual. And anyways, he's the founder of the monastery I'm headed to. But I ended up there last summer, and it was crazy because for a week, I, in my mind, was not doing anything. I was sitting. But that's when the most happened. That's when I was really able to go inside myself and see so much and start to unsee and unlearn and then relearn the world around us. And it was that moment that kind of was a spark. It was like, oh, there's a lot of different ways to live this life. And one of depth is really nurturing. So I think that was a wake up moment, and I joined a Sangha from there, which is a community of mindfulness practitioners. And that was really helpful because I started to practice meditation daily. And then I will say, I think that also the really big wake up moment was when a significant person in my life, my grandfather, who I'd be happy to talk more about, he passed away. And it was not something where, I was in the room. I was actually part of that process of death. And that really woke me up to life itself. And the questions got louder, and so I kind of decided to tend to them, to listen to them. So a few big moments, but really it's slower, kind of nagging process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a continuous process of, like you said, learning and unlearning, and experiencing all of the different facets of the human experience and life in general. And I think it's really important, like you said, to just make sure that you're making the conscious decision to look inward for some of those answers, because the more that we chase after those external answers, the more inner turmoil that we experience and suffering and all of that not so fun stuff. But I know that when you published your website, I'm not sure what the impetus was, but I know that a really gravitational pull that I felt toward your website was your blog. It was your story, really describing your relationship with your granddad and that whole entire experience. So I want to talk a little bit about that next. So I will link all of it in the episode description. Kate has her own website. She features some of her creative work as well as her conservational work, which is really, really, really interesting. But her blog post, and I believe it's titled The Space in Between. Is that right?
Mm-hmm, exactly. Okay. You've got it.
Amazing. Yeah, I read it the other day for the first time, and I genuinely, it brought me to tears. You are so eloquent, Kate. You have such a talent for capturing a story. I mean, and you said it yourself, you have a knack for storytelling, and yes, you do. It was so emotionally saturated, and I felt like it opened a portal of my soul, because you do have a way. I think your nature and your presence is very, very welcoming, and it's very soothing, but it's so impressive how you were able to carry out that same type of energy with words. There is an energy that you can feel when you're in the room with a person, and I felt that from the second that I met you. I genuinely feel blessed that you were there on that trip, truly. And I haven't even told you how important you being there was for me. But the way that you capture that in your words, I think, is really beautiful. So essentially what the story is, and I'll let you describe it in your own words, is Kate's experience and her relationship with her grandfather, and then, helping assist in his passing. But what was the impetus for you wanting to document and share that story?
Mm-hmm. That's a really great question, Gabby. Because I will say that before that, I had never written. And I was kind of like, why would I tell my life story? What's interesting here? It's just it's a great one with my relationship with my grandfather, because he had Alzheimer's, and during COVID, we became roommates, and we both took care of each other in different ways. But why? Yeah, what's interesting there? And for me, it kind of came at this moment where I think a lot of media these days, and when you step back and you think about the time that we're born into, this is a wild time to be alive. We got so much going on. Kind of a lot of intense things, a lot of beautiful things. We also have this media that's been created where we can be in contact with someone who is states away, countries away, in real time. And this is just powerful. Like you can touch a lot of people with media these days. And I think what I've noticed is that they don't always share the harder stuff. It's easier to find a lot of, um, yeah, like, curated life things. But I think it's important to kind of show up authentically. Like, that's kind of what we need as, common humans is just like, hey, this is what we're all going through, what we're feeling, what we're processing. And that process is what is beautiful to show. And I also think I notice is like, you know, my life um, is what I've experienced and what I can bring to the table. And so I can't tend to the suffering or the joy of someone else, but I can work to understand myself. And we can talk more about like the concept of non-self in Buddhism. But really, when you understand what's going on with you and the life that you were born into and have created, like kind of understand the things that are greater than that. And so my reasoning of bringing to tables that story is I'm trying to understand myself. And maybe in my story, you see yourself too. And there's that commonality there. And so when I hear that it really resonated with you, that just makes me so excited because that was kind of the goal is to be like, here's my whole self, the parts I'm trying to figure out, the parts that are more challenging, more beautiful, undiscovered. This is like my raw, beautiful, messy life. And here's what I'm learning from it. And if this isn't kind of what life is about, is the learning of it, then I don't know what is. And so that was kind of my reasoning was just kind of just put something really authentic and present out there. And it's how I'm making sense of everything.
That's very, very cool. And I know that you talked a lot in your blog posts, and you as an individual, you've always been curious. You've always had this desire to understand. And I think it's so interesting that once you start to understand yourself, you said it yourself, it's you then understand others, and then you understand the universe because it's all connected, right? I think that idea of me being able to resonate with your story, others being able to resonate with your story, and this idea of awakening, I think a big component of that is recognizing yourself and others in you, and really kind of eliminating this idea of the separateness that has been so ingrained in our minds, and looking at people and experiences and just this life as more collective in nature. And I think that that has been a really, really big portion of my journey in this awakening and this massive shift, in love and compassion and everything of that sort, is just really, really trying to look at others and hope that others look at me as reflections of one another in a way. And so I think that that is really, really cool. And because you had this desire to understand yourself and others, I think that it's all encompassing. The more that you ask the questions to yourself, the more that you rope other people and other experiences into that equation, the more that things start to align and things start to make sense. And yeah, you said it yourself. Like, if I don't know I don't know if that's the true purpose of life. I believe it is, but if it's not, then I really have no idea what is. So I think that's very, very, very cool. So with that being said, one more question on that topic. Do you feel like you were compelled to understand yourself or to understand others, or maybe to understand your purpose here on earth or whatever? What kind of came first? What was the domino that started the effect?
Ooh, that's a really good question too. Um, hmm, let me think about that one. Well, I will say, so I think it always started. Hmm, that's a good question. I think it's like,
I thought about this before I asked you because I think I've got my answer. I'm eager to hear yours, but I had a little bit more time to think about it. I don't want to like put you on the spot because it's a tough question to answer. And maybe you don't necessarily have an answer, and that's okay also.
it's one of those things where I think it's like a tapas platter where like I had like the hummus, the tabbouleh, all that stuff, and like I kind of had all the questions just separately, and then I think um my experience with my grandfather, and that's like I totally forgot to mention, a big part of me sharing that specific story is like, it was, when you read any book of like Zen masters or people like yogis, they talk about entering like a state of awakening and seeing like white light and energy and all that stuff. And I experienced that with my grandfather. And that was a huge reason why I wanted to share too. Um, but in that moment, all of those questions were answered in one moment. So it was kind of like, yes, you can choose which path and which way you want to tend to the greater thing, but it's all the same. Um, is kind of what I realized. So that's a good question. I suppose that it really depended on the time of my life. Like I think your teenage in the early 20 years, you're very much more focused on like the individual. Um, but definitely, I don't think you can have one without the other. I don't think you can question yourself without questioning what's greater than the self.
I
But
agree.
what's your answer, Gabby? I'm very curious now because now you got me thinking.
I think I think the domino that started the effect for me was just understanding my my place in this greater
Mm,
experience, I guess. So it was more of a purpose driven question than it was a means to understand, I guess, my emotions, or I guess they really are all connected, right? But for me it was a purpose, like this life is this the only life we have? If it is, what am I meant to be doing while I'm here? Just all of those questions kind of in myself came from that purpose seed. And I think then you start to understand that all of those questions of like relationship and emotion and career and experience, all of those are so connected. So mine was purpose driven, and then I think it started to unfold when I felt I got closer to my true purpose of love and compassion, and helping others to understand that they have the tools within themselves to acquire this sense of fulfillment, and really just instilling that fulfillment over improvement, because it's like grasping is not something that is ever going to be a sustainable mode of mentality, right? But then I guess just roping all of those in together is kind of how we got here.
mm. Yeah, that's a really good one. I think fulfillment and yeah, that's a good approach to it. And I think what also I really appreciated of what I was hearing is yeah, just like the at least in my mind, it's much more daunting to try to understand like the nature of the universe than it is to understand to kind of go within myself. Um, And so that's kind of been my approach. Is like, there are some questions I'm gonna have on this in this life that I'm not gonna know the answers to. And that's okay. Like honestly, those are not what I need to answer right now. But these bigger questions like how do I want to understand things? And again, if you can understand yourself, like you can understand things greater than what what is. So that's kind of been my approach uh,
Yeah,
to tending all of them. Yeah,
and
it's just
I think
recognition
that
like you can't answer all of them.
yes, and I know you're so right. Looking at the universe and trying to understand all of these cosmological components and everything like that, it's daunting but so interesting when you
Wow.
start to dive deep within,
Mhm.
because you recognize that you really are the universe experiencing itself. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Like, how beautiful is that? Like I wake up
I
and I'm like, wow, I am the cosmos conscious of itself. Like that is pretty epic. And I'm in this form where like we can smile and hug people
I
and
know.
dance and climb like tall things that are pointy. Like this is wild.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's so it's like the more you get into it, I feel like it creates this fervor and like this passion for life, because you recognize that it's like it's all just so cool. But sometimes you go through phases, and life ebbs and flows, and it's cyclical and everything like that. It's not always like, oh, this is awesome, you know. Um, but some of the quotes as I was reading through your blog, I would love to kind of break down a little bit. And I want to kind of rope in this idea of the present moment as well, because I know that that is something that is very, it's a constituent of the Buddhist tradition, right? And I think that, in meditation and mindfulness, that is really the goal, is to anchor yourself to the present moment. And I know that in your blog, you speak a little bit about some experiences that I feel like are so vibrant because they're anchoring you to the present moment. So when you said that when you venture into the unknown, that you feel most alive, most vulnerable, most strong, and most vibrant, I really resonated with that as well, because I think that pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and kind of being on that edge is what anchors you to the present moment in a way that it's like you are right here, right now, and you have no other option but to focus on exactly where your feet are. And so, cultivating that space for yourself to be so present and experience things fully is what leads to that, like, the vibrancy of life, because it's so saturated in that moment. And so I guess I would just love to hear from you, what your take on being in the present moment looks like for you, and maybe some other experiences in your life that you've had where you can say right here without a doubt, like, that was me being present where my feet are. And I feel like that's when you start to experience that true nature of life.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah, being present is a great one. And I think it's like, uh, always an ongoing practice. And especially in our world where we have so many distractions, it can be really challenging sometimes. But I think present, in my sense, is just like truly being where you are, like grounded, like recognizing where your feet are, what you're doing in that moment. So it doesn't really matter what you're doing. You could be on the computer, you could be gardening, you could be cooking, but just being mindful of like, okay, this is the task that is at hand. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm experiencing it. The senses of that experience, the feeling tones, kind of just having an awareness to it. Um, and it's funny because it kind of the present, it has these like we have in our minds this future and then this past, and they're always kind of taking us astray from the present moment. The past is, I've noticed in my mind, it is such a ruminator. And I've actually named, like, when the voice that starts to ruminate, I've named it Rumi. I'm like, oh, Rumi, you're going off again. Like, and it will kind of just talk about, like, things that might have happened or happened in the past. And I see it, as a protection and different things, but it's taking me from where I am. And then you have this one, and especially if you have a creative mind, um, I have one where I come up with crazy future scenarios of life things that might happen. And it could be in 20 minutes, it could be in 20 years. Like, my mind goes crazy. And it's kind of funny. And it's fun because, like, it's a way that we can plan things and create the lives that we wish to live. Um, but it's kind of like a tool. You have to use it as a tool and not have it use you. Um, so for me, presence is like truly being where you are. Um, and I've experienced that like when I'm doing anything with just a lot of intention. So I have gone to a few deep meditation retreats right now, or in the past, and that's really helped because all you will be doing for 5 days straight is like 8 hours of meditation. Let me tell you, that's when you really can see your mind
Oh yeah.
at work. And my mind is not really present. And so it's practicing presence. And that's everything is. It's like, all right, I'm going to eat this bowl of oatmeal and I'm going to be really present about it. Like, do I actually like the taste of oatmeal? What does that taste like? What's the sensations of it? Um, and so I think that's what presence is kind of just being fully where you are in that experience at that moment.
Yeah.
And it's a practice, and it's one that, yeah, that's why I'm like, we're quite excited to really try to get in. more at the monastery, but it's one that we can do all the time by just really grounding ourselves in what we're doing. And it's kind of cool because by tending to the present, which is all that we really have, right? Past doesn't exist, future doesn't exist. We are tending to both of those because we're writing our past and we are like truly creating our future in every present moment that happens. So it's
Absolutely.
something that boggles my mind. It's a practice that I try to cultivate um, regularly, and yeah, it's a really important one, most certainly.
Yeah. I think what you said about using your mind as a tool, not letting it use you, because I fall into that duality so often of, okay, I am the creator of my own reality. Like, perception is key. Okay. If I want something to happen, like, you've got to use your tools in your brain and be mindful about, your intentions and everything of that sort, because at the end of the day, we are creators. And I love that narrative. But then sometimes I'll fall into the, okay, go with the flow, like let things happen, and there is a balance that has to be found.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me, that is my number one priority, to allow myself the space to figure out, because that is definitely something that I think, again, over time, it's continuous. It's a process of evolving and learning and unlearning and everything of that sort. But using your mind as a tool, not to your own demise, though, of falling into that, consistently projecting into the future, and always jumping to this need to create and provide for a future version of yourself, and forgetting to tend to the one that is present in this moment. And I think too that with all the different ways that you can achieve that level of mindfulness that anchors you to the present moment. I think it's so funny that you just talked about eating oatmeal, because that's something that I have been trying to practice more regularly, is just mindful eating, of when you're eating, taste the food, smell the aroma, be there, process the chew, like what does it feel like in your mouth, the textures, the taste, because we can get so, like, I feel like, especially in Western culture, like we're always in a rush, always in the next thing. Like, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me eat really fast and let me go. And I remember, growing up, I would eat in the car on the way home from school because I had to go right to swim practice, but then I forgot something, so I had to go grab this, and then I had to eat on my way there, and I had to run here, and I had to go there, and it was always just okay. It was a part of the rush. And so eating is such an interesting one that you bring up, because that's something for me. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, I have to grab this and I have to go, and I'll take a banana on the way. That's fine. But really, just if I have the time to be there and eat my meal, be present in that and be mindful about what you're doing. And eating is just one of the many, many examples, whether it's movement, whether it's a conversation, meditation. There are so many different streams that you can take to meditate and cultivate that awareness and that presence. Whether it's moving meditation, I really gravitate towards yoga. That's my thing, because if I'm moving my body, it takes me a little bit away from following and attaching to my thoughts and my mind. And so when I'm in my body, I'm more in my mind and I'm in my soul and everything. So I love movement. But I think too, it's in a conversation. It's being in stillness. It's being in nature. There are so many different ways, but I think that finding the one that you you feel like you maybe gravitate towards, because it might look a little bit different for everyone. So I think that's really, really cool.
Absolutely. And I think and that's the cool practice. Like, life is meditation. So, like, and I think too why I fell into this interest is because I grew up not being very mindful and being very much in thoughts and very much like in the, if I'm not doing something, I'm not being productive. And that's not good kind of
Yep.
mentality. And so it was like mission impossible when I first went to my first retreat, and they were like, you know what you're gonna do for 2 hours is you are going to, yeah, eat this apple. And I'm like, what? That's crazy. But it's funny because, boredom will kind of come, it'll arise, and you can let it be there, but it's like hiding a little bit. Because when you start to think about like actually what eating an apple is, it's like kind of the most epic thing. Like, this one fruit was created by this tree, took 9 months. It came from soil and water and sunlight, and then somehow manifested itself into flesh, and then someone picked it, and then flew. Who that? Like, you can get so into eating an apple and the crispness of that. And so that's just trying to kind of say that, like, there's a lot of richness in just being where you are. Um, and yeah, I absolutely agree that there's a lot of different forms and ways to do it. And it's important, just like it's important to have like a variety of tools, it's important to have a variety of ways to kind of connect yourself, and to know what you feel the most grounded by. And so I do love to move my body also. And um, I think, you mentioned yoga being a really great one for you. And that is a really cool movement because it's so connected to breath. And I think breath work is something that I'm just starting to get into, but it's really critical because it's totally like our life force. And um, it's with us all the time. Yeah, which is really neat. And I actually read this really neat book. It's called The Wakeful Body, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone who's starting to get into kind of mind body awareness because it takes us out of separating the mind and body. And it's really just like, this is just one thing. And that's a really beautiful way to see us ourselves, and also offers a lot of really interesting practices to kind of cultivate that awareness.
Yes. Very, very cool. So okay, now I want to talk a little bit about your granddad, about Ray Ray. And so if you want to kind of take the direction of that conversation, I would love for you to just be able to provide some background, as much or as little as you would like to go into it. I just want to kind of give you the floor because I do want to touch on a couple of the other components to your blog that were really centered around Ray Ray. So I'll let you kind of introduce him.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I wish that man was here to introduce himself because all you need to do is see that man and you would know the type of character he was. But so Ray Ray is, it's actually short for Raymond, which was his real name. But that was my grandfather who was on my mom's side, and he recently passed away from Alzheimer's, but at 94. But was a huge, significant person in my life. So, how do I even describe him? He was just a force to be reckoned with. He was a really petite man who would love to do anything and everything, and was highly creative. Loved to play music, like saxophone and garden, and um, yeah, just was a force to be reckoned with. And our relationship, I think, I always loved him dearly as a child, and he would cultivate a lot of joy. That was kind of his mission. Um, but it really deepened when actually he developed Alzheimer's, and that was about 10 years ago. And so I was in high school, and I remember thinking to myself, like, this is a loss. Like, I am losing my grandfather. And in that moment, I kind of had two options. Like, I could just let go and mourn and grieve, or I could do that and hold space for like the rebirth of something. And that kind of turned into this new person in my life who I call Ray Ray, who was not this really powerhouse of a grandfather, but this like crazy naked man who all he wanted to do was ride around Maine and eat ice cream and sing Frank Sinatra and was hilarious. And I was like, this seems like a great best friend. And I loved hanging out with Ray Ray. Because you know what? A lot of elderly, they're pretty great where they're like, you know what? I only got so much of life. Like, I'm going to live this thing how I want to live it. There's a lot we can learn from elderly, but that's like a whole other conversation. Anyways, Ray Ray and I, we were besties, and it got even more beautiful and more intense when COVID hit. Because I was studying in Vermont, which is quite close to where my grandfather was in Maine. And I remember driving because I usually stashed my things in his home there, and noting he had a caretaker at the time. How like we really didn't know the state of the world, and so I was going to go back to Florida with my nuclear family, but realized like, this is like, if who's gonna take care of Ray Ray? So my mom and I ended up moving in and becoming his primary caretakers. Um, and so that's who Ray Ray is. He was my best friend, my grandfather, the person I tended to, um, and yeah, I think what's really cool is like just the recognition that our elderly, right, are ourselves. Like there's so much to learn from them. And so even in this state that he was, where he wasn't fully present, in a lot of ways he was more present than he ever was. And that was kind of a beautiful thing to unearth a little bit. Yeah, do you have? I can keep going, but do you have any kind of questions or
Yes. Yeah.
thoughts right
Yes,
now?
I wanted you to be able to set the stage a little bit in your own words, but first I want to just commend you for your recognition of the wisdom and the beauty of being old. Like that is so awesome, and I think that it's overlooked by so many people. So I think that the respect and love that you have for your elders is very beautiful, and your curiosity and your desire to understand is beautiful, because there's so much to understand about everyone, but our elders in particular. They've been through so much and they've seen so much and they've experienced so much that to me, I'm like, I think it's so interesting to just be able to break that down. And that's something that I would like to make more time to do. And I have so much respect for you for doing that. But I want to talk about one of the parts in your blog when you talked about your destinationless car ride with Ray Ray, and basically just this realization that your perspective on what that destinationless car ride was versus what his was, and how seeing him so embodied in the joy and the fullness of life kind of pulled you into that with him to sit in the passenger seat of joy and presence versus aversion to I want to go somewhere else, or I don't necessarily want to be doing this right now, because I feel like that is such a metaphor for life, right? So I would love to just kind of hear your take on that situation, what that meant to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was pretty fun. And I think if life and these metaphors aren't how we learn and like kind of the process itself, like yeah, like wait a second. Like that's the beauty of life is finding these little gems. But yeah, that was one that took me time to learn for sure. So again, for all of you who have not experienced Ray Ray in a car, it's driving was his favorite thing to do. And this man would sit in a car for as long as possible. So like he went to Canada and back some days. And that would be the day of like 8 hours of driving. And so for me, who is definitely still and especially was someone at that time who very was goal oriented and destination focused. And if I didn't do something or somewhere or have like an endpoint in mind, like what was I doing? Like just wasting, quote unquote, wasting time driving around rural Maine. And so it got to a point, and in my blog, I kind of mentioned it, where there was this one day where I was feeling grumpy, and I turned to him, and I saw him, and he's licking the ice cream that I got him, singing Frank Sinatra. And I was like, wait a second, he's going to be in this car for 4 hours. And I'm going to be in this car for 4 hours. But his journey is going to be so much more enjoyable than mine. Like, I'm just being a curmudgeon over here. And he's like looking at all the different trees, enjoying ice cream, singing. And that was huge for me because I was able to take that small experience and size it up and say, it is important to have North Stars in life. But like, that isn't actually what life is. Life is that car ride, is that space where you're kind of going through different places and you don't know what you're going to find. And you might get to the place that your goal is, but you also might not. And so why not just be present, right? It goes back to the presence conversation and really just enjoy the ride. And that was a huge lesson for me because, uh, I think it's important to still hold goals, but it allowed me to kind of sit back a little bit in life and let life live through me
Mm.
and kind of just appreciate all of the parts of the ride. Sometimes they're bumpier, sometimes they're just gorgeous through foliage. Um, and so that was one of the biggest lessons that Ray Ray taught me. Um, and yeah, it was pretty great. And I try to remind myself that in and out of cars.
Sure, yes, in and out of cars, right? Because it's not a car is an interesting place because you're really not going anywhere. Like
Yeah,
unless you are, driving like you said to a destination, you've got it in mind, but you're not leaving that space. So I think that how you just mentioned your focus has been in past or at times presently that you're focused on that destination. I think it is it's such a life lesson because enjoying the journey that's eventually, yes, you may or may not reach the destination because who knows at the end of the day, but just enjoying every step I think is really really important, and it adds to the richness and the vibrancy of life. But I know that I've already enjoyed this conversation so much, genuinely. There are some more questions that I want to ask you, but the last one that I have for you about Ray Ray, I would love to hear from your point of view again his experience in passing and your assistance in that, and kind of what the revelations and the profound impact that had on you. I know that you discussed very briefly in the beginning of this episode the energy and the sensation and the white light and this feeling of everything coming together and making sense, and this just overall understanding and fullness. I want to break that down and get into that a little bit.
yeah, absolutely. So I think it's important to note how much I feared, or really didn't like death to me before his passing. Something like I really feared and like thought of as just like end all, like black, nothing happens. So it was something very much that I knew was inevitable, and was really kind of grappling with. Um, and I think, this is, I think, when I started to really start to think about impermanence and just recognition of just like, wow, like we all are going to go through different phases in life and all eventually die. And that's really scary and all these things. So I definitely want to just note, like, when this all happened, like, I had not found peace with the thought of death or dying. Um, but at the same time, um, it is part of life. And I knew that it was Ray Ray's time. Um, that man was so resilient in life. But yeah, he kind of got to a place where it was like his body was kind of returning to um, another, more natural state. It was kind of giving out, and I was present with him, and I don't know if it's Gabby, if it's because we had spent so much time together, like living with him, and in a way where I couldn't really talk to my grandfather for years. I had to listen through other means. I had to listen through his bodily actions, through the way he smiled, through the things he was looking at, through the time of day, because with Alzheimer's patients, they're very, very time oriented. Um, I don't know if it's because I developed this sense of listening to him, that I kind of knew, but I knew it was time. And it was interesting because if you've ever been in the room with someone who is passing or near passing, it's very much breath focused and their breath slows down. So he was getting to breathing every like 14 seconds. And so he was hanging on. I kind of thought about him and the way he lived life. And I was like, what's this guy doing? And I was like, I think he's afraid. I don't think he's afraid of what happens next. I think he's afraid of leaving the people that he loves and looking at that, letting go as a weakness. But when you think about letting go in itself, like it's actually can often be, a strength. It's there's a lot of strength um, in knowing when it's time to persevere and when it's time to let go. And so it was early in the morning, and I went over to him. And another thing about those that are passing away is that hearing and touch are the last senses to go. So that's why oftentimes, like, you'll talk to people you love, or you'll hold their hands. Um, and so I kind of put my forehead to his, and I kind of said, like, hey, you rocked this world. Like, you did an amazing job. Uh, like, whatever you came here, whatever your purpose was, you crushed it. And even exactly what I told you, like, you need to know that when you let go now, like, that is, you're teaching us still. You're teaching me, just like you taught me about the ride, of just like the importance of kind of letting go when it's time, and honoring that. And I also tried to put myself in his shoes a little bit, and was like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm sure it takes a lot of energy to do whatever you're doing. And so I'm gonna kind of give you, some energy, and what you choose to do with it is up to him. If he wanted to hang out on Earth, that's totally cool. And so I'd never done something like this before, but what I through my meditations, and there's a type of meditation called metta, where you cultivate love and compassion. And through that, I kind of tried to envision love and like light coming through my body into his. And so all the moments I loved, all the things that we shared together, I thought about. And I just could feel through my body, and I'd never experienced this before. Just like, it was like electrical currents like going through, and it was like I was running a marathon. Like, I was like sweating. It was crazy. And I took these really two big breaths, one for me and one for him. Um, and when I let go of my second breath, I felt him let go as well. And in that moment, it wasn't darkness, but it was light, and it was this recognition that, like, you know, in the eyes of the ego, death is death. But like in the eyes of the soul, like, death is like taking off this pair of shoes and kind of returning. And that's exactly kind of what I saw and felt. And I felt him and me as just these really big, energetic lights. Um, and I kind of saw how, like, this world is just, a manifestation of energy and form. And it's beautiful. And we can kind of learn these deeper insights and tend these questions that are formlessness, that are formless. Um, but that's kind of what we're here. And that was a really huge moment for me. And now I think my fear isn't about death, but it's about not living fully. And that's been a really interesting one to grapple with. But yeah, that was it. It was just light. And I kind of saw how we're just here to really love and spread that. And it was, yeah, really, really powerful, really life changing. And it was one of those things where with death comes life and rebirth. And uh, yeah, I thought the greatest gift was loving him. And then that moment happened, and I was like, wow, this man helped me into existence twice. How cool is that?
That is so beautiful, and it's so powerful. I I've read about it, and I've experienced a similar sensation, but in a very, very different context. But I think that just that feeling of that the light and the energy flowing through your body, and just this overwhelming understanding and awareness that everything is going to be okay. It's the absence of all fear and doubt and uh, anxiety, and it's all just light, and it's love, and it's so beautiful, and it's so powerful. And I think that because of your relationship with Ray, I think that that was so profound in ways that you did a great job of putting into words, but have probably some difficulty finding the right ones to explain the true impact that the experience really had on you. So I thank you for sharing that. Genuinely, I love the way
Oh,
that you explain it.
yeah, of course. It's
It's
important because it's
it's
like,
so cool.
yeah, it shows like there was just this total oneness. And I talked to a monk after because I was like, his name is Fred. There's this wonderful Dharma teacher named Fred um, in Florida, and I was like, Fred, what happened? And he was like, Kate, that's the nature of a pure mind. Like you kind of in that moment, and it was fleeting. Like I'm back to my human self
Yep.
with the ego things and all that stuff.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
in that fleeting moment, that was what the nature of like a pure mind was, and it was beautiful. And you felt just inherently, it was cool because you in that moment you hold space for connection with all and oneness, right? But
Yes.
there's also this uniqueness in each of us. And
Absolutely.
you can see that very, very clearly when you're in that clear state.
Yes. And it's so in that state when everything else dissipates and you have no no, I guess, thoughts about what is not. It's just there, and it's like I really, it's so difficult to put into words. But yes, unfortunately it is fleeting, but also not unfortunately, because eventually we will return to that true nature. And right now, seeing little glimpses of that and figuring out ways to unveil that in others and create grounds for that cultivation of that energy and that true nature in other places for ourselves and our peers on earth, I think is the purpose, is the mission, is the awakening. And I think that that's really, really cool. So with all of that being said and all the experiences that you've had leading up to this, I want to kind of conclude with how you made this decision to embark on this journey and leave, as you had referenced, your career path that you had blazed for yourself for quite some time. And it's, of course, there's this idea that we have to follow this strict path, and it's like if you miss a step, you're screwed, but you're not. And so, of course, you're still going to be doing some farming and things that are related to your passion for conservation. But how you made this decision, because making this time commitment, as much as time isn't real, like we talk about, but making this commitment, how did you get to that point, and how did you overcome those challenges in making the decision?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciate you, yeah, opening up the space for that one. Because it definitely did take time. Um, well, I'd say, just like we all have different curiosities, this has been like things I'd love to do in my life, like live in a monastery. I was like, that would be really interesting. Um, and I think was kind of debating it, thinking about where I am in life, um, but was, had a really good job in conservation and was kind of on a path. But really, Gabby, it was, if we go back to like the body, my body was just really loud. And I could kind of feel that something wasn't quite there. And when my grandfather passed away, it opened up this part of myself again that like had all these questions. And there was a part of me that, you know, was like, nope, just you can live and answer them alongside, which is totally true. But then there was another part of me that was like, Kate, what if you give yourself permission to like really go and tend to these questions? And it's just like if you go to like soccer camp, like your skills are going to get super expedited if you go and focus fully in a space. And so, yeah, I applied to the program and let it sit for a little bit. But the more that I meditated and when I like stepped out of myself and I thought about what, the 20s are about, but also like where I am in like the history of the world, this is like, yeah, again, a crazy time to be alive. And my mind is what's gonna kind of carry me through life. And I think this is a time for all of us where resiliency is really important. Um, and I think a deeper, mission of mine has always been to kind of help heal the world and help offer joy and light and love. But in order to do that, we have to understand first how to do that within ourselves. And so it kind of was like when I sat with it, it was like a no-brainer. Like, if I want to go tend to these really bigger things, and really be an advocate for peace and resiliency, I need to know how to cultivate all that within myself. And so that's kind of what made me really say, like, I feel very lucky, that I have that opportunity. And, it would be, yeah, um, it's something that I think is not just for me, but for a lot of other people too. And yeah, that's kind of what really drove me, was starting to really listen to myself and what I was starting to feel inside myself, and then also think, what's my bigger mission here? And sitting with my mind and learning the nature of my mind for 3 months to a year will definitely, set me up for no matter what I do, because it's not about the doing, it's really about the being. It'll set me up to kind of be, kind of a leader in the way that I'd love to help lead others. So that's kind of, yeah, that was kind of my thoughts there.
That is so awesome. I am so excited for you, Kate. Like you're such a beautiful person, and I cannot wait for you to embark on this journey for yourself and for the future impact that you're going to have on every person that you cross paths with. Genuinely, you are a light, and I appreciate you so much for sharing all of your experiences and your story today. So I know that I personally will be following your journey. I'm super excited to see your updates and all of that fun stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up after your time spent at the monastery. But I want to give you a little time to plug yourself. How can other people follow your journey and connect with you outside of today's episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're interested in following what a monastic life would be like, especially as, like, yeah, how do I just, my mind is all over. Like, if you think there's no way I could live in a monastery, that's probably my mind. Like, so if you're like, what would it be like? Totally come, check out my blog. My goal is like, at the monastery, there's lazy Sundays. So, hopefully, to write weekly or bi weekly of what kind of this life um, looks like, but also the insights or the little practices that I've started to do that kind of start to change things. So you can find, I think Gabby is going to hook you up with the link, which is great. You can find the link to my blog there. You can also follow me on Instagram. I hope to play with a lot of fun things there. And yeah, with the intention of kind of sharing little meditative practices that we can all do to kind of cultivate spaciousness and openness. And yeah, it's really what we do in this space in between, this, when we offer ourselves breathing room, that the magic really happens. So that's the name of the blog, and you can follow it there. And yeah, from there, if anything else pops up, you'll definitely be able to find it. So yeah.
Yay! I'm so excited, and this was such a wonderful conversation. I feel so blessed that we were able to find the time to sit down and hash into some of these things. So thank you again for taking the time. And yes, I will include all of your details in the description so that everyone else can hunt you down and follow your journey. I'm super, super excited for you, and I genuinely wish you the best of luck. I think that you are going to be exactly where you are meant to be, and with the people that you are meant to be with, and experiencing the things that you're meant to experience and learn and unlearn and all of that fun stuff. So I wish you the absolute best, and I am so excited for you, Kate.
Well, thank you, Gabby. And from me and definitely all the followers here, thank you for creating space for these crucial conversations to happen, and for organizing and leading all the stuff and inviting me on. I feel very, very honored. And I know we did such a fun little touch of so many different things. And so I'm excited in a few months to dive in deeper. And yeah, I just really appreciate you too offering up so many beautiful insights, and yeah, inspiring people to kind of lead really joyful, thoughtful um, lives. And yeah, I'm very excited for you too. So I just want to thank you as well.
Amen, sister. All right. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and hopefully I will talk to you soon. If I don't wish you off before your journey, good luck, and I truly do wish you the best, Kate.
Oh, Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, come visit anytime. Come hang out with me and the monks and the nuns.
Yes, I honestly would love to. You might just catch me there on a
Oh
random
my
day in
gosh.
the city and be like, "Hey, Kate, just so you know, I took you up on that."
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I should really plug this. It's Plum Village. And they have a whole, if you're interested, um wow, whoa. Okay, well definitely I'll definitely send you things because I'm like, wait, what about people who are interested in this stuff? Where do they start?
Yes, yes.
The great thing I would say is to you can definitely start your own practice, which is great. Just like 5 minutes a day of
Hmm.
meditating can do huge wonders. And there's an app called Plum Village, which is great. Also, Tara Brock and Kristen Neff have things online. And then I would say what really changes the game is community. That's what's crucial. That's why like soccer camp is epic because you go and everyone's doing the thing you're doing. So finding a community of mindful practitioners, and you can do that through the Wake Up Humanity website. So if it's like Wake Up, and you can find a local sangha there. And I would just invite everyone, if you're interested, just to try it out. Try going to a sangha near you. There's a bunch of online resources and sanghas as well. But that really starts to change the game because then you start to meet people and they'll kind of find you on your path.
That is awesome. Please send me all the websites and all the links that you would like me to include, and I'll make sure that they're all in the description so that anybody who is interested can follow those sites as well.
Perfect. Thank you. You
Of
rock.
course. You rock. Thank you so much, Kate. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Crucial Conversations. I hope that you were inspired by this talk and reminded that you are capable of anything you have the capacity to imagine. Share this episode with someone that you want to help unlock their maximum potential. Because sometimes, in order to find the answers, you have to know how to ask the questions. And that is what we do on this podcast. I love you all, and I will see you next time on Crucial Conversations.